Welcome to Small Talk, where each week we sit down to discuss the sermon-based small group questions at Wallula Christian Church.
Hello and welcome back to Small Talk, Wallula's weekly podcast. My name is Zach Bolin, student pastor at Wallula Christian Church, joined by Craig Archer, worship pastor, and Lance Kaufman, lead pastor. We're glad that you're with us today. We are back in Nehemiah. We're looking at chapter 4 as they are building the wall and all that it entailed, and now we're facing some opposition as they go into that. So we're going to look at a few questions, but before we do, we're going to start off with the fun one, and it goes like this. What day in your life would you like to relive? And so one special day above them all. Craig, what's your day that stands out? What's your Groundhog Day?
My initial thought was like wedding day or kids being born, that sort of thing. And then I realized I'm really not that far removed from, especially the kids being born.
Keeps happening.
Yeah. Keeps happening. But Haddon's only 2.
Right.
So it's not like, I mean, I think years go by and then it's like, oh, to go relive like holding her for the first time is like, and she's pretty small. I can go pick her up again.
Yeah.
Right now.
Honestly, those days aren't that great.
Yeah.
But you're getting to my answer.
Kids being born, it's part of the curse for a reason.
Yeah.
You know, like
it's intense.
That is not.
It's a long day.
Like birthday. Now the kids are wonderful.
Yeah.
Right. But the being born part
Right.
is the thing I could do without.
Because right now I recall feeling like a zombie.
I was going to say lack of sleep.
And you're just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Birthday 5 better than birthday 1.
Yeah.
You know.
So
whatever.
that's not my answer.
Or 0.
Because I thought about that and I was like, I don't think so.
Right.
And so I was trying to nail down a day, and that's difficult. But I would go with like being like a kid and maybe just kind of, I mean, like a normal kind of day where like even like a Christmas day or something like that.
Sure.
And thinking about just being with family and like with grandparents that have passed. And like when you're a kid, I mean, those days are awesome, but to go relive it, I think you would
appreciate it now.
Appreciate, just how something back then can feel kind of mundane or like any other day. But as time goes by, you realize the preciousness of it. And so, I would say something like that. And even I was thinking about my grandpa and I, we used to get in his little S10 pickup, and he would just drive around to like small towns in Kansas. Like this was like a weekly thing in the summer. He would buy me ice cream at like 10 in the morning, and just stuff like that. It's like, that would be awesome to go relive some of that stuff.
You can get ice cream anytime you want. Like, you're an adult.
That's true.
You can get it at 9 in the morning on your way to work if you're coming.
You're just at the door waiting for Dairy Queen to open.
Yeah. That's all you need. Yeah. No, that's good. It's funny. I actually had, I wrote down a couple and then I put kids ? Because I thought, I feel like I should be saying when they're born. And then I was like, I'm not like, it's the same way. Like, like in hindsight, that's an amazing thing and it represents so much, but lack of sleep, a long labor, and especially with your like with Graham, it's, you're hoping everything's fine and then it is, but then it's like, okay, now go home. And you're like, what?
Yeah.
Like there's no joy in this uncertainty of, like them teaching you how to buckle them in.
Right.
And they're like, I think you got it. And we're like, I don't have anything. Yeah. I don't know. Like, please come with me.
Yeah. Because Elsie was born in Lawrence and we had moved up here by the time she was born. Yeah. So like that 40-minute drive was just the longest, most nerve-wracking drive.
Yeah.
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 I'm feeling very self-conscious having this conversation because
was it just really easy for you?
Well, there are 6 people involved in all the birth of our children, and we had it the easiest of half of those people. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Like, the mother of the children.
Yeah. And we're all just throwing it away.
Yeah.
Nah, I'm not counting that.
We're like, that's so hard. We didn't get enough sleep, and we had to drive them to the hospital.
No, I'm not saying I had a worse, but I'm just saying like that's not the day I would want to relive.
It's not. It's not.
But what I put was this was actually hard. I didn't have like one day that was like this was the most special day. And looking back, there's a lot of really cool experiences that I had that just. Looking back, I was like, man, that was really amazing. And I didn't realize at the time, there was Andy Bernard talks about that. Like you don't realize you're in the
good old days.
The good old days until after. But I remember.
I like how you just name drop Andy Bernard as if he's like a real historical
from
person.
The Office.
From The Office, yeah. It's a famous quote from The Office.
Yeah.
It
is? Yeah. Yeah, at the very end.
Last episode.
Yeah, the last episode.
Oh,
okay.
I believe you.
Okay. But one of the things, I have a lot of really fond memories from college, but specifically, my mom worked at a ski area, was in charge of skier services. And so like we skied for free. Like you would go stay with my mom and she just gives you tickets because that's what she was in charge of all the tickets and groups that came in.
Yeah.
So my freshman year of college, I was like, hey, I usually go out there for Christmas, and I don't know how it came out, but she's like, you want to bring your friends? So I was able to bring 12 friends. There's 12 of us total.
Oh my gosh.
So I invited 6 guys and 6 girls, and we got out there. So we got to ski for free, and then she was able to use extra tickets that she had to like barter with someone at a condo and say, I'll give you these tickets if you can give my son and his friends a couple of rooms for like 3 nights. And so we had a girls' room and a guys' room, and we were all crammed in 6 people in each of these. We each had a condo to ourselves. But so the skiing was free, the lodging was free, the lift ticket was free, all that. All we had to pay for was gas to get there, and then food. So we just went to Sam's before we left and stocked up on sandwich meat and stuff. It ended up costing us $100 a person for a 5-day trip, like 2 days traveling, 3 days skiing. And then it was just all of us skiing all day, and then just, going back and making, cheap food and hanging out. And so I don't know what specific day of that, but that trip was just so fun and like effortless. And then, they got to meet my mom, and she's awesome and funny. And so anyway, just a lot of, it's all good memories from that trip. Just the dumb stuff we did, the inside jokes, the riding in the car ride. So, and skiing was my favorite. So, probably somewhere, one of those days on the ski trip, it was just all my best friends. And so.
Did your mom have the same job after that trip?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
She does that. No, like she'd been there for 15 years. She had a hard job there, like, because she was customer service. And so the owner of the mountain, her boss, was like, I've done every job there is to do on this mountain, from like ski patrol to everything else. She goes, I've done everything except yours. And he goes, your job, like, it's dealing with the public.
That's not fun.
No. And so he was like, she had a good job there, and he didn't want that. Like he realized she owned a lot, so she was able to hook people up,
keeping people happy.
Yeah. So he was. No, there was no. She wasn't.
I was just teasing.
I know. But I'm like, she was pretty awesome there, and so, no, it was great. We did it. I mean, I did it 2 more times. Like,
really?
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
In college, taking groups out there,
that's
and so
cool.
it was great. And then once again, she's like, I'm going to ski forever, and then she ends up moving here, and I'm like, I haven't skied since 2005.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
It was good, yeah.
Especially if you can go back and relive that day and ski as 21-year-old.
Oh yeah.
Self.
Not as 44-year-old with a knee that I screwed up skiing a few years later. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really have one day. I was thinking along the same lines. I thought people expect you to say something like the birth of your children, but that's not that. You don't want that over and over again. You don't want to go back and relive that. Yeah, I mean, yeah, and or even like your wedding day. Mm-hmm. But I mean, if you're doing it right, like anniversary 2 should be better than wedding day, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anniversary 32 should be better than wedding day, and I think because I'm just not, and I don't mean that. I don't want to get too deep here, but I'm just not a big event
Like that, the event itself doesn't hold an emotional
like when you have to
tie
behave a certain way,
Yeah.
it starts making me a little nervous. I'm not sure if I fit in here or whatever. Yeah. So, yeah, like the wedding is good. I mean, you want to have those memories or whatever, but I would just take a normal day.
Yeah.
Sherry is so great. Just a normal day.
I'll take yesterday.
Yesterday was good.
Was there no like vacation or trip that you guys went on that was?
I'm sure. Yeah, the things you guys are saying, like a day when you're a kid and you're just, I'm trying to think. Oh, you win a ball game. You go relive that as a kid. That's pretty awesome. Or just a vacation anywhere. All those things would be cool. But yeah. But I just don't, I was just thinking along the lines, there are these really milestone days in your life, but I'm not sure you want to live the milestone over and over and over. That's all I was thinking about that question.
No, that's true. Yeah. No, that's good. All right. Well, we're going to move on as we look at Nehemiah chapter 4. So they're going through a difficult time. They have some opposition into building the wall. And so at number 7... of the small group questions, it says, "Why is it so hard to remember who God is when times are difficult? What can we do to keep a right perspective about God and His love for us, even when life is tough?" So when we go through hard times, comparing to Nehemiah, and they, rebuilding the wall is hard enough, but now they're getting opposition and they have to change even how they do it, and it's getting more and more difficult. And so, why is it hard for us today to remember who God is when things are difficult, and what can we do? What did you have, Craig?
For the first part of the question, why is it hard to remember who God is when times are difficult? I just think when things get difficult or there's opposition, it's so easily, or I think this is humans in general. I know this for myself. It's so easy for me to fixate on the problem. And it's like, that's the thing that's right in front of me. And it's really hard to direct my attention anywhere else. And oftentimes I will kind of like put that onto myself and think like, I have to shoulder this and figure it out. Yeah. And this is only my responsibility, and I just kind of like feel the weight of that, and then it just kind of becomes like a me thing. And so I think that's one of the biggest barriers in just kind of not letting God into the situation and what's going on. And really, we talked about this in the first chapter, Nehemiah's example, and we see this was in chapter 4 as well, his example of something bad happens, opposition. His reaction is to pray, for prayer and fasting. And so I've been thinking about that a lot since we read that right at the beginning of our study in Nehemiah. It happens again in this chapter, in verse 4, when he turns to God again. And so that example is really good for me, and something that I need to keep following, just directing my attention back to God. But then thinking about what can we do to keep a right perspective, and really that I think comes down to, what are you going to do beforehand, before any of that opposition or difficulties might come. And one passage that I thought of that I go back to a lot is Psalm 139. I'll read a little bit of it, but it's like, for me, it's a great reminder that I'm not the one in control. So I'll read it. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but a little chunk of it. And I think it just helps me like frame me and put kind of my life into heavenly perspective. So Psalm 139 says, "O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in, behind and before, and you lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, and it is high, and I cannot attain it. I love this section. Where shall I go from your spirit? Where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light about me be night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as day, for darkness is as light with you. You have formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written every one of them, in the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them. So there's so much in there. Like God's presence is with me no matter where I go. Just a reminder of being created by God, that I'm not my own. There's just so many things in there. It's like, well, when I face opposition, and I think that it's all on me, it humbles me a little bit to read this. It helps me remember that God designed me and He's with me. He'll never leave me. And those reminders. And so it puts me in a place where it's like, okay, I can kind of like loosen grip a little bit, and it's not in my control. And it's an opportunity for me to be in His Word and be in prayer. And so that's just one place that I go a lot. And there's I know a lot of songs that have come from that passage as well. So listen to those songs, and just a good reminder for me.
Yeah. One of the things you said right off the bat was what I first thought of too, which is, why is it hard to remember who God is when in difficult times? We're kind of, I don't know if we're wired that way, but man, whatever we're going through, we seem to dwell on. I think that maybe is something that you said. And I thought the exact same thing. One of the things I tell new parents, because I learned this, I think I knew it, but then I learned it with my own kids, is whatever they're going through will feel like it never ends. So like if your kid is not sleeping through the night, and you're constantly waking up and you're tired, you're going to tell yourself, it just feels like this will never end. And then all of a sudden it does. And then you kind of look back and almost laugh. When they start teething, you're like, man, it feels like it's just never going to end, this difficult time. Potty training, it feels like it's never going to end. And then it does. And you look back and you're like, oh, wow, you recognize that was hard, but it's something that everyone goes through. And it's funny talking to like empty nesters, because I feel like every time you hear someone, an empty nester, when they're talking to parents who are going through it all, they always talk about, you just enjoy it. One of these days it's going to fly by, and fly by to them is 18 years. When they say fly by, they mean 18 years, and then it'll be gone. And so there's a perspective that empty nesters would have for parents, to say like, yeah, what you're going through may be difficult at times, but it's going to change. And also, there's going to be a time when you don't have kids at all. So having that, the first part is, why is it hard to remember God when things are difficult? Is because we get so focused on this, and it's hard to look past it because it just seems like it's surrounding us. And so how do we get the right perspective? The first one is, and you already said it, but I said stay in the Word. I think being in the Word offers us two things. One is it gives us perspective of like, how has God been faithful to other people during hard times and difficult times? So we have story after story of God's faithfulness, but also it helps give me the right perspective. Like when you read from Psalms that it refocuses us, because the Bible doesn't say anywhere you're not going to go through difficult times. Right. Like it's very clear that Christians will go through difficult times, but that God is with us, that He will strengthen us, that He never fails. And so having that mindset, the Bible gives me hope for people who've gone through hard times, kind of like empty nesters, but then also just reshaping how I look at the problem itself. This may be a problem, but really a lot of people grow closer to God during difficult times because they're searching Him out. So how do we have the right perspective? The first one I said, stay in the Word. And then the other one was just community. I think one of the things that Satan does really well is to get us to be isolated with whatever our difficulties are, whether it's personal or external. And so when we have community with others in the church, with other Christians, other believers, number one, we can go to them for support, like physical support. I'm going through something really difficult, and so we have people who can actually meet needs, whether it's showing up to your house or whatever. They can give perspective. Man, one of the things that's been really helpful to me in all stages of life is just to talk to someone who's also gone through it, and just to hear their story, even if their story is like, it was really, really hard and I'm out of it now, but yes, what you're going through is totally normal and you'll be fine, and then the third one is to give encouragement. Like, community can offer that too. So just taking advantage of what church has to offer in that. So like the word and community, I think, are two of the best things that can help us have a right perspective when we're going through difficult times. But
yeah, great answers. I just think the answer is built into the question, right? Why is it hard to focus on God when life is difficult? Because it's difficult, because it hurts, and you guys have both said it in one way or another. You get focused on that pain. I just think some great advice from you guys, and for sure, I think theology matters. I mean, why do we get lost in that? It's at least part of the reason is that we have a wrong view of God. We have too small a view of God. We don't really understand how big He is. The Psalm 139, whether you're in heaven or hell, basically is the idea that He's there. He's everywhere. He's that big, and He can handle the situation. The Bible plan that I've been reading through, you read in different sections every day, and it's set up so that you'll repeat. Like, I'll read through, if you follow the plan for a full year, right, then you'll read through the Gospels 4 times. And so you read through Acts. Acts is its own section, so you read through that like every month, right? 28 chapters in the book of Acts. So you just keep going back and read through that every month. And one of the sections, don't quote me exactly because I'm not I don't remember exactly what's included, but I'm in the book of Job. And I think I read through Job like the Gospels. So I think I'll read Job 4 times this year. And I'm sort of dreading it. Right? Because Job is rough. It's just like...
It just kind of keeps spiraling down.
Yeah, but you read through it, and there's just these little glimmers of hope every 3 chapters or whatever, But God will come through, kind of thing. Except that He has this perspective that kind of the whole deal with Job is, all this terrible stuff is happening, and his friends are telling him to curse God and die, and just throw it all away, and kind of Job's perspective in a nutshell. This is too simplified or whatever, but his perspective is sort of, who am I to tell God what to do, right? And man, we don't have a Job-like perspective on God enough. When we get upset at God, and it's not that we shouldn't be upset, because I think even Job is upset with God. I mean, he's like, why is this going on? What's happening? But eventually he gets to this point where, okay, you're God and I'm not. And that's the place we have to get to, is that when we get focused on our pain, we'll say things like, why would a good God do this? And why, how, well, He's God and we're not. Who are we to say? Who are we to make this judgment that this is the appropriate thing or an inappropriate way for a God to act? Maybe you've heard people say that sometime. If that's your God, well, I mean, He's God, and so we just have to have a right view or a better view of just how big God is. I know that's not super comforting in those moments. That's not what I'd lead with when somebody's struggling with it. But, when you go back to Scripture, when you turn to Him, Nehemiah just right away turns to God. If we can get to that point where, okay, He's God, I'm not, I can always go to Him, sort of thing, then maybe we can lean on him in hard times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and then as we move on into the section, verses 15 through 23, we're looking at kind of the last two questions, and we realize that even though that Nehemiah and the people faced opposition, that they still continued to press on, but they had to make some changes in how they approached building the wall and what they had to do. So I'm going to combine these two questions, and I'll let you guys decide how you want to answer them. But in number 9, it says, how did Nehemiah and the workers get back to work? And then number 10 is, how can we prepare and plan effectively when facing opposition in our own lives? Mm-hmm. So they faced this opposition by changing their strategy, and then they changed their strategy, but then also, as we look at the application in our own lives, how do we do that? What did you have, Craig?
Yeah, today I randomly remembered that I had a book on my shelf that I read years ago. Is written by Dan Sutherland, who was lead pastor at West Side, like the Lenexa campus, years ago. He lives like in Florida or something now. He wrote a book called Transitioning, and it's actually a study of Nehemiah to help churches go through a big change.
Right.
And so it's kind of like a case study that he applies to church stuff. But I randomly remembered I had that on the shelf, so I opened it up to the chapter that we're on, and he had the subtitle for this section. It was worded a lot like this question. It's like, how do we prepare and plan? And the first thing he said was, expect the opposition and criticism.
Right.
So that was the first thing that he said. Like, instead of what are we going to do, like the first thing is get into the mindset that things like this will happen. And we've kind of already talked about that. And I made a list of things, and you already mentioned some of them. So it kind of connects to this first question. But we already talked about spending time in Scripture. And, on Sunday you were talking about in prayer and like being honest in our prayers. And we see that, like you said, in the Psalms, like what honesty when people are speaking to God and praying. And that's like, it comes down to confessing. And I think about in the New Testament, that dad that is following after Jesus, and he said, I believe, but help my unbelief. Even prayers like that, where we recognize those things in our life and we're crying out to God for help in certain areas. Zach, you mentioned being in community, because I was thinking about the opposition or difficulty, and you said like those things are painful, and it's easy to feel alone in those scenarios. And so putting yourself into community, remembering that the Holy Spirit is with us and active and working, and not just like a neutral thing in our lives. Like when Jesus talks about it in John 14, in your Bible, if it says helper, it's like a capital H, helper, advocate. Like that's a source for us to run to, the Holy Spirit in our lives. And then the last thing was waiting, and kind of this is our theme, is like relying on God and remembering that He's bigger than we might think He is. And so if we're relying on Him, we also have to exercise maybe some patience in the waiting and see how things are gonna. If we're partnering with Him, then we're not going to be relying just totally on ourselves. And so there's some of that we need to exercise as well. But those are the things that I thought of.
I was thinking, I recognized there was sort of overlap between what I said the first time and even this one. I'm like, there's, and how do we prepare, and how do we, what do we focus on? But, like what did Nehemiah do and Nehemiah and the workers do to get back to work? They were just building the wall, and then they started getting this opposition. They were getting some threats, and they're like, okay, how do we keep building this but still protect ourselves? And so they had to armor up. They were like, building with one, and they had a weapon in the other just in case. They were prepared at the moment's notice. Like if you hear the trumpet call, you got to come. And then even later on, they started sleeping inside the walls with their clothes on, just in case something happened. They were always ready. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Not with their clothes on, but like with, yeah.
I was just thinking about an earlier conversation. Just put on a pair of shorts.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Be ready to go. Be ready to go. That's all that made me smile.
Before this happened, as you started smiling, I was like, did I?
That's all I
thought
was
I
thinking
said
about.
that right. But yeah, sleeping and being ready to go at a moment's notice. And so, but yeah, they had to change their strategy as they went. Like, hey, this is going to be hard, so we're going to have to just motivate the people. And then there's opposition. They're like, okay, now we got to motivate the people and also protect ourselves. And then we have to, do all that. And so then going to number 10, how do we prepare and plan effectively when there's opposition in our own lives? And I thought of initially, and you talked about theology, but in Matthew 5:45, when it talks about how rain falls, God causes rain to fall on the just and the unjust. And so the theology of that is the idea of, why would a good God allow bad things to happen? It's like, that's the wrong question. Just realizing, hey, bad things are probably going to happen. And even as a Christian, it's more so because, bad things happen to everyone. But then if you're living out your faith, you have, threats of sickness or cancer or whatever. And then also with your faith, you're probably going to get people pressing against that. And so recognizing, like just being honest with, hey, this is going to be the norm, not the exception. So don't be thrown off on that. And then thinking about the wise and foolish builders, the wise man built his house on the rock, and which is the word of God. And so in everything I do, whether success or in opposition, having the word of God as my foundation, as where I get my wisdom, figuring out what to do when difficult things happen. So on top of that, which is what I said last time for the other question, but I thought, what can I do to plan and prepare? Before anything happens, I have to have the mindset of no matter what, I'm going to continue to keep moving forward. So that means when difficult times come, I'm still going to be engaged in church and community. When difficult times come, I'm still going to be in the Word and in prayer to God, because I think that's one of the biggest things that happen is that, like, when hard things happen for whatever, we kind of pull back. People stop showing up as much. I see it in the youth group and people in church. A difficult thing has happened, which is hard, and then so church seems to be almost that canary in the coal mine where that's the first thing that goes when something hard happens. And it's like the thing you need the most is the community and the teaching and the consistency in God. So
it's the same reason why that turning to God is so hard for us in those moments, because we think we have to be cleaned up to meet with God.
Right.
We think we have to have it together to show up to church. We think, this bad thing has happened. Now I don't have it all together, and people are going to judge me, or people are going to whatever.
Yeah.
And that's a lie from the enemy. I can't promise you nobody's going to judge you, but I can promise you that you need the church then. You need a relationship with God. You need that community then. I think about in Nehemiah, I'm sorry, Zach.
Very good.
I think about in Nehemiah, and Nehemiah said, I kept the trumpeter close to me. You know? And I just think, when something hard happens, not even badness, but something difficult is going on in our life, then we also have to be willing to blow the trumpet.
Right.
We have to be willing to ask for help. We have to be willing to say, this is the hard thing that I'm going through. And so being in community, sometimes that can just be the support of knowing that somebody is fighting next to me, and that can be very helpful. But sometimes we need to sound the trumpet and say, I do need help. Can you carry this with me? Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that. I didn't think about the trumpet connection, but I mean, that's really good. But I said, so that's, no matter what, my first thing is I can't pull away. Right. If I'm going through something difficult. And then the second thing I said was plan. The plan is to like advance, to change my plan, instead of just, I'm not just going to go to church, but it's to reach out to other people, and especially a respected Christian, and then to be honest. And so if I'm going through something difficult, whether it's external, something's happened to me, or I've screwed up and it's my own fault,
Right.
It is good to still stay plugged in, but you need to do something different. Like they're like, hey, we're going to build this wall. Now we're going to build it with a weapon in our hand. Now we're going to build it sleeping behind it with the trumpet.
Right.
We're going to have to change. And so if something else in your life has changed, letting people know about it, and then being honest, like really honest with someone that can give you that wisdom, and also just to listen, like to hear your confession or your struggle, is such a huge thing. And like you said, we feel like we're alone. It's a lie of Satan. I think in anything that happens, Satan's biggest thing is to make you feel like you're doing it on your own. So he'll try to get you physically. Stop going to church.
Right.
Or he'll say, go to church, but don't tell anyone. And just, put on your smile. And I think the more we could be honest with each other, and even in the trenches with each other, that's what makes community so valuable. And then the last thing is I said equip yourself. So I try to think of what that meant, like that, instead of having a weapon. So talking to people like, what should I do? How did you get through this? What's worked? Knowledge. Maybe it's steering clear of something like, okay, my next plan is this. I can't do this anymore because it's just, if it's a person at work or family member. It was hard when it's like facing opposition. What does that mean? And I'm like, well, are we talking about someone is attacking you, whatever? Is it a family member? Is it whatever? Or is your opposition just your own sin? You know what I mean? Or temptation.
Right.
So I kept trying to think of what's each thing you could do to prepare. But whether it's getting wisdom in a certain thing, or just physically steering clear of something, or having a response, or whatever else. But in anything, cover it in prayer, and but getting that wisdom from other people, and letting them be a part of your journey. So what did you have, Lance?
Yeah, well, just more of the same, I guess. Expect opposition. There's an enemy out there, and he's for real, and that spiritual battle is for real, and we have to be ready for that. When my son Clayton was in high school, he wrestled, and I remember he used to say things like, well, so and so has a bad ankle, or my knee hurt, but you can't limp onto the mat, because if you limp onto the mat, your opponent will just attack that injured part. And I always thought, these are wrestlers. Like, are they really that smart? But the enemy, that's where he goes. When the wall is only halfway built, he's going to go to that low part. And so you have to be ready in those spots, and the spiritual battle, we have to be ready in those spots, and it's just happening all around us. Like the last couple of weeks, we have I don't always go there right away, and I probably should more often, but these last couple of weeks, we've been having trouble with the interwebs and our streaming, and man, we're trying to figure that out. And I just think, maybe we need to replace some hardware like we have. Maybe there's some physical, technical things that we have to figure out better. But I just think we've asked this question, well, why? We haven't had any issues, so why are we having issues now? Yeah. And I don't know as if Satan has attacked our routers, right? But there is an element of spiritual warfare where he wants to use whatever low wall, whatever broken part we have to keep the story of Jesus from being shared well. And that's true all the time. So we have to be ready to sort of go into battle.
Yeah.
And at this chili cook-off, the Vision 2025 meal, I asked folks to, hey, and then over the next 6 weeks, will you pray and fast for just direction for where are we going in this next year? How do we want to do this? So maybe we have to add another worship service or do some things to get the story out more. And so what does that look like? Will you pray and fast with us to do that? And talk just a little bit about maybe lunch on Thursdays, or fasting on Thursdays for the next 6 weeks, and how whatever that looks like in your life, we'd ask you, okay, in these 6 weeks, think about Wallula, pray about Wallula, but we need to spend those times in prayer and Bible study, and those just set the foundation. They just fill us up to be able to, it's like having our hand on the sword. We're ready to go into that fight, and so those are the things I was thinking about here: having that community, being willing to sound the trumpet, preparing ourselves in prayer and Bible study and all those things. So
yeah. And not to go too much into it, but like even as you said, the wall, like there's lower parts of the wall or whatever, like in our own lives, you use the bucket illustration, but what parts of our lives need to be built up, like are not protected.
Right.
Like you could be strong and whatever, but you have to, they were also trying to build up where they were weak. And so recognizing if there's always going to be opposition in some way, in our lives at some point, trying to protect ourselves and not being foolish with that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, excuse me. Well, hey, thank you guys so much. We will continue on this conversation next week, and we're glad that you're all with us.